Are you allowed to lie during a language test? Hello number ones and welcome to Metatron's Academy, the channel where we explore how to learn languages in the most fun and effective way possible. So today we have a little bit of a perhaps strange question. Can you lie during a language test? Are you actually allowed to lie, and would it have any consequences? Also, is there any situation whereby we could say that you in fact should lie during a test? And last but not least, is the answer, I don't know, acceptable? I think to be able to give you the answer, I need to first define what I mean by language test. So I'm talking about the sort of language proficiency test that a lot of foreign students of any language really at one point in their career wish to get a certification of. For example, when you talk about English, you could get like the Cambridge degree, Sitting Guilds of London. There are a lot of institutions that will put you to the test, both reading, writing, your ability to speak. And then if you pass the test, of course, you get a certificate that you can add to your CV or resume, and it can help you to get points, credits at university, and of course get a job. And an example of that for those who study Japanese is the JLPT, or Japanese Language Proficiency Test, called Nihongo no Ryoku Shiken. So I would like to say, for those who don't know, that I do have direct experience as a examiner. So not only, I want to say in my previous life, that's what it feels like, but in my previous professional life, before becoming a full-time content creator on YouTube, I was an examiner. Let's say that you're a student in Italy, study English, you want to get a B1, B2, C2 English certificate, most likely would have run into me if this happened about like 10 years ago, I want to say. So the answer I'm going to give you don't come from just someone who prepares students to take exams, but for someone who is exactly on the other side. And I've had experience with hundreds of candidates and hundreds of tests. And the sort of experience I'm going to share with you has to do with three specific qualifications that I have: interlocutor, invigilator, assessor. Interlocutor is the guy that actually asks you the questions during a spoken or oral exam. The invigilator is the guy who just sits, occasionally walks around during a written exam to make sure that everyone is complying to all rules and regulations, and also starts and stops the clock. Last but not least, the assessor, who is the person who sits in the back and basically reviews, gives you marks, and at the end of the day, decides whether you pass or not. I'm fully qualified and trained for all of these. So, can you lie during a test? Well, believe it or not, the answer is, it doesn't matter. Let me give you an example and see what I mean. Let's say you are in the middle of a spoken test, whether it be in English, in Italian, in French, in Chinese, it doesn't matter. And let's say that you are actually speaking to a human. Not all tests are with human interlocutor, but let's say you are. What the interlocutor is going to do, so the examiner, my job is to follow a paper that gives me several possible questions that I can ask, and follow-up question I just select. So let's say they ask you a question, do you like traveling? And let's say you're already being vetted by a professional teacher that tells you, don't just say yes. Because of course this is a test to verify and sort of assess your ability to speak. So if you just say yes, it doesn't work like that. And let's say that the candidate's answer, so your answer, is the following. Oh yeah, I absolutely love traveling. It's one of my favorite things to do. In fact, I want to say for me, it's almost a little bit of a hobby. I try to travel as much as I can. Of course, I'm rather busy in my day-to-day life, but whenever I have a chance, I do travel, and it's a lot of fun. Like, if this is considered to be a really good answer, I've used several idiomatic expressions, I've used a couple of native sounding fillers, it's a good answer. So seeing that you're doing pretty well, I then decide as an examiner to follow up. And I ask, tell me about one of these trips. So here the student is asked to, of course, demonstrate their ability to speak in the past tense, but possibly when talking about English we want to see simple past, present perfect simple, present perfect continuous. Depending on the level, of course, the expectation will vary, but generally speaking, this is what I'm testing: your vocabulary, your overall pronunciation. There are a lot of things that go into a follow-up question like this one. And let's say that you, as a student, are thinking to yourself, oh, there is that trip, and I went on a trip with my cousin, and we went to Madrid, and it was great. So you decide, hey, I want to talk about that. So you start your answer. All right, so 2 years ago, I went to Madrid in Spain. Really beautiful town. It's a lot of fun. The food was great. I went there with my... And then you pause. Why did you pause? Because you went with your cousin. But let's say you don't remember the word cousin. What are you gonna do? Well, at this point, the student has a few options, in my opinion. And the one option that most candidates will take, unless they are told otherwise, is to try and remember that word. In this case, cousin. What if you don't? Maybe you don't know the word. Maybe you do know the word, but you don't remember it because, a little bit of anxiety during the test. And definitely the worst thing to do, strategically speaking, is to stay there and do this. I went there with my with my One thing you need to know about examinations like this is they are timed. The amount of time you're given per answer is strictly indicated in the papers that the examiner has in front of them. They will give you a few seconds to gather your thoughts, but if you keep not remembering, they will go on. And this is what's going to happen. Okay, moving on. I'd like to show you now a picture. If you could please describe this picture for me. So as an examiner, everything is timed and I need to finish within, usually it depends on the level, of between 10 minutes to 15 to 18. And the amount of time that I can give you to gather your thoughts is very limited. So what should you do if you find yourself in a situation like this? And mind you, has this actually ever happened to me? Absolutely. I'm telling you what happened during a test with a candidate. This is a real story. And this is actually a story that I've used to then teach my students as I was preparing them for exams. So in a situation like this, the best thing to do is to lie. Okay, but this is kind of controversial. I don't feel comfortable with this. Why are you telling people to lie? Because it's not really a lie, is it? Let's say you find yourself in that situation and you start thinking, yeah, last year I went to Madrid. It was great and a lovely town. I went there with my, and you don't remember, cousin. Just tell them you went there with your brother. Tell them you went there with your dad. It does not matter. It's actually kind of funny if you think about it this way, but could you really see an examiner, professional examiner, stopping the exam, blocking everything, and taking away your certification because they actually call your brother and they go, hey, are you the brother of Mr. Okay, so did you actually go to Madrid? Oh no, it wasn't you, it was your cousin? Sorry mate, your exam is null. You just come back next year. Of course, calling it a lie is a little bit of a shock factor. Theoretically, technically, it is a lie if you tell me that you went there with your brother because you couldn't remember the word cousin, but it's no big deal. Of course, I'm not saying exaggerated. I mean, if they ask you, do you work, don't just make up that you're an astronaut because that's gonna make it feel weird during the discussion. But I'm just saying, if it does happen that maybe you wanted to tell me about the vehicle that your girlfriend bought yesterday, but you just cannot remember the specific brand, like you can't remember what brand it was, just say another one. It really doesn't matter. Also, because one thing that oftentimes people don't realize is that these tests, the only purpose is to assess your ability to speak. What you say is not assessed, which is why we can connect to the second part of this questions, which is, can you say, I don't know? Well, you see, if you're taking a history test and your history teacher at university asks you the date of the Battle of Hastings and you're like, oh gosh, I don't know. That's not good. It's going to reduce the points, right? Because the more questions he asks, the more you say, I don't know, the more the teacher is going to be like, okay, well then come back next semester. But when it comes to language exams, your secular knowledge does not matter one bit. So if someone asks you, let's say it's a high level, it's a C1, and then they ask you, what is your current opinion on the morality of cloning or something has to do with politics, and you literally have no idea, you can absolutely say that you don't know and pass the exam full marks. So how do you do that? Well, the way to do that is that you don't just say, I don't know. Just like you don't just say yes or no when someone asks you if you like something. So if I were to ask you a question such as, what do you think is the nicest thing about Holland? And you don't know anything, you can say that, but I would elaborate. So, bad answer, I don't know. Good answer. I don't know much about Holland, to be honest. I'd like to. A friend of mine actually had a few interactions with some Dutch people, and I really think they have a cool language. Again, I don't understand it, and I don't know much about the history, but I think it would be great if I could, find a nice book that would explain much about the history, the geography as well. Like, I don't know where the rivers are. I don't know what mountains they've got. Also, what countries they border with. I have an overall understanding, but I'm not really... Geography is not my strong suit. You've just turned a I don't know question into 1,000,000 points in your favor. So, any question they ask you during a language test, remember, first, if you don't remember a specific word, find a substitute, it doesn't matter. Second, if you don't know the actual answer to the question, it's okay as long as you elaborate eloquently. In fact, there isn't a wrong answer during a language test. In fact, as long as it's coherent, grammatically correct, well pronounced, well explained, there isn't any wrong answer. In fact, there is only one exception to this rule: silence. Silence during language tests is an answer. Through silence, you're telling the examiner that you didn't understand the question, or that you don't have the ability to answer the question. So when you don't say anything, as an examiner, I don't know if it's because you didn't understand or because you just don't know how to answer. So this can connect to the last, question. Can I ask an examiner to repeat? The answer is yes, you can, as long as you don't do it too often. And generally speaking, as an examiner, what I would do is that if I ask the question, what's your favorite kind of music? And the person doesn't understand, you can say, sorry, could you repeat, please? But once again, try to be elaborate. So don't just say, what? Because that's not very good. It's true that some natives do answer that way. I mean, you do have rude natives, but here, it would demonstrate that you don't know how to navigate a specific situation, which is a test. You're not talking to your friend, you're talking to an examiner. You need to demonstrate that you know how to interact properly. That's all part of the test. So, as usual, don't exaggerate, don't make it too long, but make it nice and elaborate. Sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you say that again, please? It's a nice way to ask. Now, what happens if you don't understand again? The examiner will repeat, usually once if they're very kind, twice, but then they will move on. So for example, during an A2 exam, the question would be, what type of music do you like? On a B1, a very similar question could have the word type, which is usually simple for Romance speakers because tipo, type kind of sound similar, and they might swap and put kind or sort. What sort of music do you like? What kind of music do you like? And so it could happen that someone doesn't understand. Now, can you ask to repeat? As I said, yes. Can you ask, sorry, what does kind mean? That one is kind of grey. Some will give you a definition, others might not, because you're supposed to know that. And also, another thing you usually can't ask is to ask your examiner to speak slowly. You can't really do that because speed is also dependent on the level you have chosen. With that being said, absolutely ask to repeat. If they repeat and you understand, great. If they repeat and you don't, navigate it nicely. Say, okay, I'm sorry, I think I'm missing a word or two here, so I don't really know how to answer this question. If possible, if we can move to the next one, would be great. I would really appreciate it. Once again, you didn't lose many points because you were very articulate. Okay, noble ones, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an insider perspective when it comes to how to handle certain specific situations that do occur, believe me, during international tests. I hope that you found this one interesting and intriguing, and if you have any questions or you're preparing an exam, let me know in the comments below. And thanks for joining Metatron's Academy.